And just like that, folks, we are back on Good Story Live, joined by the wonderful, the intrepid, I'm running out of adjectives, Ginger Crosby.
After 2 seasons, or well, after 26 episodes last season, 25, whatever we did, I can imagine it's hard. It's hard.
Well, I'm not going to let you down. I'm going to come up with some more, and we'll keep this ball rolling.
Wonderful.
Down there in Atlanta, Georgia, of course. How's Atlanta today?
Great. I have my son has been obsessed with "Don't Stop Me Now" by Queen. Obsessed. Actually, both my kids are, and so
I was expecting Wheels on the Bus to go round and round, but
"Don't Stop Me Now" by Queen, and they both sing it. And I think it's because I don't know if it's actually in a Sonic movie or if they have somebody has overlaid it some Sonic clips. But ever since he saw that, he has been thoroughly obsessed. And now he mentioned it right before I came down to film. And now, of course, the song is stuck in my head.
Stuck in your head, right? I mean, that's what happens with Freddie Mercury. So,
right? How could it not? What's going on in Wisconsin?
Up here in Wisconsin, we're doing good. Yeah, that's right. That's the Yooper in me. There's no Yooper down in Milwaukee. That's two different dialects. But that is the one that generally is associated with the entire state.
Absolutely.
Doing fine. I have a confession to make. Confession time for Ginger. It's check-in time. We didn't mention this last week when we had Peter Demore on, but we do still have the Good Story Live movie of the week that we all do need to watch. And I'm just as guilty as you if you haven't gotten around to it yet. I intend to, Ginger. This is not delay. This is not avoidance.
We're 3 weeks into the month, Jesse.
I know. It's the third week of July. My apologies. I know we're going to talk about it next week. So, folks, if you haven't watched, it's Pride and Prejudice 2005 with Keira Knightley. That's the movie this month. You still have 1 week to watch it, and then we're all going to discuss it on next week's program. So, be sure to join us. I'm looking forward to
if he shows up unprepared. I can't imagine.
I've been busy writing. The writing's been going actually really well.
Oh, good. Oh, wonderful. Well, I guess it's okay, but 1 more week, sir.
Actually, the other night I was going to watch it. I was in the zone. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to write it. Just going to write a little bit, and then I'm going to watch the movie. Next thing I know, it's like 10 o'clock. I'm like, oh.
It's hard when you get in that flow state and words are just pouring onto the page.
I bet our guest also has moments of delaying of other things when he gets in the zone because artists tend to be that way. I'm actually very, very excited to talk to our guest today. Poe and I have I don't know if a personal connection is quite the right way to say it. We were customers of his at one point. And I'm going to, as soon as we bring it on, I'm going to show the piece that Poe and I bought from him. But our guest today is Josh Moulton. He is a Chicago-based painter. Read a little bio here. He's a Chicago-based painter with his own fine art gallery located on the upper northeast side of Chicago. In his own words, my work can be described as having a unique perspective on everyday life. I try to capture people, architecture, and landscapes in a way that is original yet identifiable. His work has traveled the globe. What can I say? It's found homes with collaborators and collectors both stateside and internationally. And aside from the pieces that hang in his gallery, he also offers commissioned work projects, which I've seen some of his commissioned work. We're going to show some of it. It's very impressive. Let's welcome him to the show today. Josh Moulton's joining us from Chicago. Josh, how are you?
Great. How are you, Jesse?
Doing awesome. Awesome.
I'm doing
You're just south of us. You're just south of where Ginger's all the way down in Georgia. So she can't sense the closeness here, but Josh is really like 90 minutes away from where I live. So.
Oh, that's not bad.
No.
Come visit me. Come visit me again.
Ready to anytime.
I've never been to Chicago, so I would love to go to Chicago.
Oh, when you go to Chicago, hit up Josh Moulton first. You've got to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Josh.
Kind of encyclopedia of the city too. So anyone that comes here, I can provide them with a million things to do and visit.
Perfect, because I have no clue what to do or visit in Chicago.
It's sprawl. The city sprawls. There's a lot to see. Before we go any further, Josh, I want to show the original oil painting that you did that my wife Poe and I bought. We're going to project it up on the screen here. This is called Nantucket. This hangs in our dining room, actually, and it's just It's just magnificent. Everyone who's seen it has commented on what a lovely piece it is. And when I tell them that it's an original, it garners even more attention. Tell us a little bit just about the painting that Poe and I bought, because we were very busy and excited that day. We didn't actually give you a lot of time to tell us about it.
Sure, no problem. Actually, I'm going to Nantucket this coming week with my wife and kids, so we'll spend a couple days there, and I'll take pictures for paintings.
Awesome.
But back, I would say about 17 years ago, I was on the island for my friend's wedding with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife. And, I took a bunch of pictures. I ended up doing a great painting of the Old North Wharf where the ferries come in. And the couple who got married actually ended up buying the painting. But when Instagram and Twitter and all these social media platforms started coming about, I started posting these pictures on those sites. And then this company on Nantucket saw it because of all the hashtags and @ signs.
Yeah.
And they said, "This is magnificent." They sent me like a private message. "This is magnificent." And I checked out their page, and they had these beautiful photographs of Nantucket. And so I talked to the owner, and I said, "Do you mind if I use some of these images to do paintings?" And he said, "We'd be thrilled and honored. Go for it." So I've done a whole series, probably like eight to 10 paintings of Nantucket.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so beautiful, and it works so well on our white wall, or like slightly off white wall, because we had something else hanging there originally that was very bright, lots of colors, beautiful. But when we moved into our new place, it was almost obnoxious, the amount of color. And this has a lot of muted, pastel tones and earth tones in it, but it's still bright enough to bring some color to the room. We absolutely love it. So thanks for showing us this one.
You're welcome, and I love the lines on the grass too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's excellent. We have to ask about how you started, and then we'll move on from there. So tell us, when was the first time you picked up a paintbrush? Tell us that story.
Probably like 2 or 3 years old, in my dad's studio. So I grew up in Detroit, and my dad was a native of Detroit, but he went to New York City in 1940 to Parsons School of Design on an art scholarship, full ride. And after 2 years, they gave him his degree. They said he was so good he didn't need to do the other 2 years. And he ended up becoming an illustrator in New York City for 40 years during the Mad Men era of advertising.
Wow.
And so by the time I was born, he was 56, and out of that business, there he is.
Oh, 50s. Wow.
So he was out of that business, and his father was dying of cancer in Detroit, so he moved the family back to Detroit in like 74 before I was born. And so in our house, he had a room that was his studio where he'd do portraits and landscapes and abstracts. And I had a little easel like in the corner near his drawing board, and I would just create, and he would show me all the fundamentals of art, like perspective and color scheme and composition. And it was great. So a lot of it's inherited, I think, from him, but also it's the environment you grow up in, and you're just around it all the time, and it kind of rubs off on you. So I've been doing it a long time.
That's amazing. And it must be what an experience to have your dad, right? Such a close person to you, be able to pass on all of that knowledge. Now, as Jesse said, you have a very identifiable style. Can you explain your technique, and maybe when did you start to see that emerge? Being that you started at 2 and have been around art your entire life, when did you really start to nail your style?
I'd say probably like 2002, maybe. So in high school, I was the art kid and AP art and all that stuff, and then I got an art scholarship in college and was an art major in college. But I didn't go to an art school. I went to a liberal arts school so I could study other subjects. And then when I graduated, I knew it was what I wanted to do, but I also knew it was a very difficult career path for anybody, even with my ability, So I worked for a couple years right out of college, so I could get a paycheck every 2 weeks, and then have benefits. And then I painted at night. I had my drawing board in my room, and I approached galleries, and I had shows, and I was selling. And after about 3 years, I decided to do it full time, and I've been doing it for 20 years as my career. But the question about the style is, I've always been interested in, like you mentioned in my bio, things that are interesting that a lot of people would walk by and not realize would be beautiful paintings. So
Right.
maybe it's the guy selling papers on the street, on the corner street that everyone walks by and doesn't really notice and doesn't care about. But I think it's interesting. And when you do it as a large painting, people appreciate it and think it's beautiful. And then there's a lot of other things about it, composition and color schemes that are in the image that kind of jump out to me right away. But most people don't notice those things until I point it out to them.
Yes.
So I look for those.
Your technique kind of, sorry, go ahead.
So at this point in my life, I mean, actually for the past 15, 20 years, I don't even think about it really. It just, I can't turn off the creative looking. I'm always seeing things all the time, and it's just overwhelming because there's just so much to create that I see that could be great paintings, but it's just something I've got.
Your style kind of bounces between impressionistic and realistic depending on the setting. But I know when I've seen some of your work, and we'll show some of it in a minute, where, like you said, it's the guy sitting on a park bench reading a newspaper and there's like a little neon sign next to him in a cafe. It's not something that you would normally think is artistic, but you pick up on that. And there's something almost like Rockwell-esque about some of those types of your works. Who are some of your inspirations?
Well, you're right about that. So Rockwell's work looks a lot like my dad's illustrations from the 50s and 60s too. So that style rubbed off on me big time, the illustration. And then Edward Hopper, a lot of people say my work looks like Edward Hopper. He would do people, kind of lonely people in bedrooms and and things like that. But his weren't as realistic, I think. They were a little more impressionistic or abstract.
Absolutely. I'm a big Hopper fan, and I
love Hopper. Winslow Homer's one of my favorites. He was a watercolorist, and he was an illustrator also. Gustav Caillebotte, I don't know if you're familiar with him. One of his
name, I can't identify the art by memory, but yeah.
Like 1870s or 80s, he was doing really large canvases of everyday working people. One of his most famous paintings is the Floor Scrapers, where there's these men that are on their knees scraping the floors, the wood floors.
Wow.
And their shirts are off, and the way the light's coming through the windows and hitting their backs, and they're sweaty. It's amazing, and it's a subject that back then no one had thought to do. Everyone was interested in florals and those types of things.
It almost reminds me a little bit like early Van Gogh of some of the stuff he chose to paint. Yeah.
And then there's another guy named Gerhard Richter who's still alive, I think, and he's great because he does realism really, really well, and then he does abstract amazingly. And I think that's a very important distinction to make when you talk to a lot of people and they say, "Oh, what kind of work you do?" I do abstract. Well, it's very easy to just jump right into doing abstract, right? Because you could just pour paint or like Pollock and say you're an abstract painter. But you need to know the fundamentals of art before you get into doing abstract. You need to be able to know about perspective and composition and a lot, like even Picasso. A lot of people don't know he did things very, very realistically before he went into the cubism. And Gerhard Richter is the same way.
And Ben Stahl often talked about the relationship between form and line. And how important that is when the eye is being drawn into something. I see some Ben Stahl in your work too. Let's show some of your work while we continue to talk. Ginger, if you want to ask the next question, I'm going to pull up a few of his works here.
So you mentioned you paint. Do you paint always from a picture that either you take or that you find?
Well, yeah, these days I do. I mean, when I was a student, you go out into the field and you bring your materials and stuff, and you work from life, and that's, you do that, and that's the way you learn. You learn how to do it, But once you become a professional and you've hit your stride, and you know what you're doing, you like to do it in the comforts of your own space, Especially when I work on large canvases, I'm not going to schlep those things out onto the street and and then the weather changes, the light, a cloud could come by and screw up my lighting, or someone's gonna move and not stand there for 5 days as long as it's gonna take,
Yeah. How much easier has pictures, having the ability to take pictures, man, must have made art over the years. My sister, she posted a photo on social media the other day. She's like, when it takes 15 hours to capture a photo, she's like, no wonder people didn't smile in photos or in paintings.
True. Yeah. I mean, so I'm old enough, I'm 45 now, that I used to work from, pictures that you got developed at Walgreens. But now with digital images, you just snap away, and whatever's not great, you just delete it. So I go through all my images all the time, and I come back to them. Some I took 20 years ago, and I'm like, you know what? I always wanted to do that one. I think I'm going to do that one now, and that's what's so great.
This is one of my favorites of yours. Can you tell me like where the inspiration for this one came from? Was this a photo, or did you just stop on the street one day?
No, so that was an image or photo I worked from. Although the building on the far left, I had to create based on a rendering from an architect because it hadn't been built yet.
Oh wow!
Oh wow!
So that was a commissioned painting from a friend of mine who was an investor in that area of town called Moulton Market when it was just getting built up to what it is now. It's a very densely populated restaurants, clubs, bars, hotels. And his friend was the one that installed that sign above the street, the Moulton Market District. So as a gift to him, he had me do this painting for him. I think his name is Mark Shapek or something like that. Anyway, he owns a lot of the real estate around that area. And so, that's what I did it for.
Wow.
Here's an example of something that's just borderline realistic. It's just unbelievable, the detail.
That took a long time. And it hurt my hands and my neck and my back.
I'm sure of that. Sitting there, every window.
Every little window and line. And that took about 5 months.
Wow.
But that's not the only thing I work on for 5 months. I'm working on like 10 to 15 paintings at a time, and I'm just rotating what I'm working on.
Well, tell us about your process. So like if you're working on a commissioned one and you're working on one of your own and you have to go back and forth, like how do you keep all of that under the expectation of the deadline?
That's true. Yeah. Some people have real strict deadlines, like they, for a wedding or for a birthday or an anniversary. So I really need to meet those dates. And if that's the case, I tell them you got to get it into me like, 4 to 5 months before the date, just so I have enough time.
Yeah.
And I'm not stressing about it. And some commission people like, whenever, don't worry about it. We want you to do your best work. Don't rush it. Take your time. If you need to work on something else for a while to get more inspiration, do it. That's true, because sometimes you get so burned out doing an image for someone else. It's not that it's not enjoyable anymore, because I do enjoy painting in the process, but it's not my image usually. It's like something. It means more than it does to me, and it's not that exciting for me.
Yeah. Speaking of commissions, are there any additional challenges? You mentioned that the challenge of sometimes working through a piece when it's not your own image. Are there any other challenges that come with doing commission pieces?
Collecting the money. Well, I mean, I don't start until I get a payment, but I wear all the hats in this business. So I'm the guy that keeps track of all the sales. I'm to do the marketing. I do the following up with people. And that wears on me, because really what I want to be doing is just creating, but you can't. I'm running a business and I have a storefront, and so for instance, I'd say like 2 or 3 times a week, I get emails, calls, messages on Facebook for people that are interested in commissioning work from me. And then I send them the pricing and the sizing and all that stuff. And sometimes I get ghosted and I don't hear back because,
of course,
the prices might be more than they were expecting. But then I'll get responses. Oh, great. This is awesome. Let's do it. I'm on board. And so we've come up with the size, the price, and everything. But sometimes, I keep following up. Are you ready to make the payment now? Let's make the payment. You said you're ready to go, and then you don't hear from them for like 2 months sometimes, and that's really frustrating, because they want it. They came to you. You didn't solicit them, and then when it comes time to collect the money, you feel like the bad guy or the annoying guy who's like pestering them.
Like, do you still want to do this? Because.
Or you could just respond to me,
Yeah, absolutely.
That's tough.
Now, with the commission pieces that do come your way, do you find, because you have a gallery, are these people that are contacting you from seeing your work online, or are some of these people that have also stopped in the gallery looked at the work that you have in there and then asked?
I think it's a combination of everything. I have a pretty good online presence, and I'm pretty active on social media. Jesse, you know that.
Oh, yes, very much. I'm always there.
I'm posting stuff all the time, and I try not to be obnoxious about it, but I just want to stay in front of people, and I never really include pricing with my posts. It's just the images, and then I let people come to me. But the commission stuff, and I've got this storefront on a pretty busy street in Chicago. There's 2 bus lines that go by, a big glass window so people can see in, and I have stuff in the windows all the time. So a lot of it's walk-in, foot traffic, and then word of mouth is a big deal for me. So someone else sees a painting in someone else's house, and then where'd you get that? And then they have me do something for them.
Yeah, that's how Poe and I found you. We were walking down the street, touring that part of Chicago, and we're like, "Oh, an art studio!" And that
wasn't open, right? You called
me. Weren't open, but we called you.
Yeah, then I came back. Yeah,
showed right up. You have a couple of children, right?
2 girls. Yeah.
Do you see any artistic blood in there so far, or where?
Yeah, I do. Jackson, my oldest one, 13, she's got the ability, and from a young age, she was drawing like things in perspective at the age of like 4, and I never taught it to her. She just saw it and figured out that the leg on a bedpost is shorter in the distance than it is in the foreground. It was
wow. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. But I think there's a lot of pressure sometimes because people are like, oh, you must be artistic. You must be artistic to the kids because of their dad. So they kind of don't want to do it because, they think they're expected to do it. But they do it when they're just for fun, and they're good at it. But they're great dancers, which I think is artistic. And
that's excellent.
And Carter, the youngest, Carter, is a really good singer too. So who knows if she'll pursue that? But
the arts flow in that family. I love it.
And then my wife is a poet too, so she has 2 books.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
A family full of artists.
If she has a website or anything or a link, we'll have to include it in the link in the bio below later.
I will. She has a new book coming out like in a couple of weeks. It'll be on Amazon, and then she has another one on Amazon. She uses my artwork for the covers, which is nice.
Oh, that's awesome. She doesn't have any problem securing the rights, I'm sure.
So. No, I don't, and I don't charge her for it either.
That's big of you. That's good. Yeah. I want to show just a little bit of your dad's artwork real quick here, just a few of the pieces, because you said he grew up in he was working during the Mad Men kind of feel, and he did art for different catalogs and whatnot. Here's one that I really liked with.
That's a classic, right? That looks like it's right out of the Mad Men show.
It sure does.
Yes, absolutely.
One
of the other, I think this was from one of the magazine periodicals that he was.
That was for Pepsi. That's a Pepsi ad. She's
serving
Pepsi to the.
There's one other one from your dad here. I'm trying to find because it's so small. There we go. There it is.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he did all these interior for this hotel that was being built in New York City.
It has such style and class to it. I love seeing his work. A lot of it's featured on your website as well.
Yeah, and can you go back to that picture a little bit?
Yeah.
It's a little cropped, so you don't see the whole thing, but there's a style of painting that he did there that a lot of people don't know. It's called a vignette. So do you see how the color kind of bleeds out and it kind of flows at the top and it flows at the bottom? So it doesn't come to the edge of the page all the way around. That's called a vignette. And that's done on purpose, and it's a very stylized thing.
I'm glad you pointed that. Was that specifically for that era of...
Yeah, it was kind of really popular back then, yeah.
Okay. I like that.
I do it sometimes, too. I did a bunch of illustrations for a jeweler's magazine or catalog years ago, and I did them all with this vignette look.
I wanted to highlight this one as well, because Poe and I bought this one, too, from you.
Oh, yeah.
Big fan. This is downtown Chicago from Seen from the Lake. Was this a photo or is this one you did?
That's from a photo I took. Yeah. That's a painting. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But it was a big canvas piece. That took a long time. All the little windows and lines and reflections. Yeah.
Didn't you use reflections on the bill, like on the glass curtain of that type of, or the curtain wall of that one curved building? It's just spectacular.
Thank you.
Oh, man.
From a distance, all of my paintings, even the ones that are super realistic like that one, all of them, from a distance, they look very photographic. But when you go up close, even with this one, you see the looseness of the brush strokes and the paint that's applied, and it looks a little more abstract as you get closer, which I do on purpose, because I don't want it to look exactly like a photograph. I mean, there's a lot of skill in the people that can do that.
Yeah.
But you lose the hand of the artist when you do that. You don't really see the application of the paint, the brush strokes, and the looseness. And sometimes I just kind of leave a certain area a certain way, and most people won't notice it, but I'll remember it was like that when I see it again.
Your fingerprints are all over it. I love it.
I look at this and I'm like, do you ever start one of these, or you have the photograph and you're like, ooh, this would be great to paint, but then as you said, it's like you get into all the details and you're like, why did I choose this?
I know. Some of them I take. Yeah, that one was great too.
Yeah,
look at the water, Ginger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you know how long this one took?
I don't really remember. Maybe a couple months, but again, like I work on a lot of stuff at the same time.
Do you ever go live on any of the social media platforms as you're painting?
Not really. Because I'm not a performance artist, you know?
Yeah.
I could.
For sure.
It might be instructional and helpful for people, and it might grow my, maybe I should start a YouTube channel.
I think she can help you. Ginger knows all what to do, so she can.
Yeah.
But there's kind of like, there's not a stigma, but there's kind of this idea of like Bob Ross,
Sure.
TV show, and it's like, I'm not that guy.
Yeah. I wouldn't even think it. I'm just imagining like headphones in or music playing.
Yeah.
And essentially ignoring the phone, ignoring the live that's going on, and just painting.
I don't know, Josh. I think you could pull off the perm. I'm just saying.
Well, if I put a wig on.
Tell us about this piece.
Yeah, that was the first freighter painting I ever did. I grew up near Lake St. Clair, which is a small lake where the Detroit River feeds from Lake Erie up into Lake St. Clair, and then there's a river that takes the water up into Lake Huron. So you got the Great Lakes all around Michigan.
Yeah.
It's on the east side near Detroit, but the freighters come through there through this channel. And they're beautiful, and they're magnificent, and they're huge. And so years ago, a friend of mine reached out to me on Facebook, and she said, our family friend takes these beautiful photographs of freighters. You should look at them, and maybe he'll let you do some paintings of them. And I realized he was my what's it called? Skin dermatologist in middle school. So his name is Dr. James Brown, and he owns a place in Grosse Pointe and a place on Harson's Island. And he goes out on his boat and he takes these magnificent photographs of freighters, real up close.
Wow.
So I reached out to him. I said, "Do you mind if I do some paintings of these? I'll give you like a percentage of the sale if they sell, or I can pay you up front for the pictures." He's like, No, go for it. Use whatever you want. So this was the first one I did. I really love doing it. My wife says I do water really well.
You do. It's beautiful.
Thanks. And then since then, I've done a ton of freighter painting.
Is it? Are you primarily using oils? I know you mentioned watercolors before. I
use acrylic, not oil.
You use acrylics. Okay.
Yeah, that's what my dad used. I painted in oil in high school and in college. The thing about oils is it takes a long time to dry. And you have to use turpentine to clean your brushes, which really smells. Oil paint smells too. And you have to use paint thinner, which is something and I'm left-handed too. So if the paint is still wet, I'm going to smear it a lot with my hand.
Oh.
When I write too, so I smear stuff. So acrylic dries very quickly. You can use it really thick like an oil, and you can water it down like a watercolor too. So I use watercolor paper, but I use acrylic paint. So it gives it a different effect. You can kind of float the paint on there like a watercolor, or you can use it real thick.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Who'd know? I am out of my realm here. I love that you guys are both in your element. I am out of my depth.
Well, let's assume that Ginger walks in your store one day to buy a painting.
Yeah.
how would you guide her into what she's looking for? Because when Poe and I walked in, I mean, this is not meant to be a diss, but we were overwhelmed. I mean, we didn't even know where to start looking. You had so much available.
Well, that's what a lot of people say. They're like, "Oh my God, there's so much to look at. I can't make a decision," you know, because I have all those baskets of prints also, not just all the originals. And a lot of times people ask me if I show other artists in my gallery, and I say, no, I don't have any room to show any other artists in my gallery. I have so much work of my own, and then I sell some of my dad's stuff too, and so I don't do that. But yeah, you know, I just let people kind of wander around. I say hi, and I tell them original paintings are on the walls. I have small prints in the baskets you can flip through. I can make big prints of all my paintings, and then I let them do their thing. And I tell them that, you know, reach out to me if they have any questions. So I don't want to, like, you know, bug people.
Sure.
And sometimes I'll just say, do you mind if I paint while you're looking around? And they're like, sure, no problem. So I'll be painting while they're looking. And then if you know, then they ask me questions, or I'll ask them, are you interested in originals or prints? And it kind of goes from there.
Yeah. I am the person that's too intimidated to go into an art gallery or a studio.
Yeah.
Well,
my gallery is not like that.
No,
most art galleries, you're right, are very intimidating. But
I'm like, we've talked about this last season. It's like, occasionally I'll walk by a gallery, right? And I'll look in and think, oh, it'd be neat to go in there and look around. Yeah. But I don't know.
When I first opened 12 years ago, I had a sign in the window that had pricing of my prints of my paintings, which encouraged people to come in because they weren't that expensive. You know, if you can get a small print for $20 or a small frame print for $50, then they're like, oh, I can go in there. You know, and then once they're in here, then the originals are in the thousands. But you know,
yeah, and I think that's part of it for me too. It's like, oh my gosh, I know I want to go in here and look, but it's like unlike Jesse, where Jesse has started to collect, right, and curate his walls, I have not even begun to start that process, nor would I even know where to start. So I think that also just adds to the whole intimidation factor. But if it, you know, a more eclectic, I'm going to say, vibe would probably bring me in.
So before I opened the gallery 12 years ago, I was represented by a few galleries around the country. And one of the first things they said to me is, if I'm going to represent you, you can't sell prints of your work, reproductions, you know, things. And I said, well, if you're selling enough originals, then I won't have to. You know? But the other thing is, I thought that was kind of snooty because not everyone can afford thousands of dollars for paintings. And I want people to still have my work if they like it.
Yeah.
So I said, you know, I'm going to do this on my own and have prints for $20 and $50 and $100 and $200.
Yep.
So everyone can have something.
Prints are super accessible, and I love them. Absolutely.
It was amazing. We couldn't believe that you offered reproductions of some of your originals. We came in, we bought the one original, and then we stocked up on some of your other reprints. We loved them.
But I mean, it's so contradicting, right? Like a gallery will tell an artist that. Meanwhile, they could be making money on the side to make a living with prints, but they don't want them to do that. But if you go to the Art Institute, you can go down to the gift shop and buy a big poster of a Van Gogh painting you just saw upstairs, and no one says anything about that.
Nope.
Oh, there's the Art Institute.
I forgot this one. I couldn't walk away without showing this one.
So that's the Art Institute in the background with one of the lions. There's two lions, and then people kind of filtering in, and then in the foreground you got all the tulips, which Chicago does a really nice job of planting greenery and flowers during the spring and summer. So there's a middle section of Michigan Avenue that has just tulip bulbs that are crazy, and so that it was a really nice composition. But the title of this painting is "Someday I'll Join You."
Oh. How romantic.
Do you know why I titled it that?
No, tell us the story.
Well, so you got people waiting around to go in, so maybe it's "Someday I'll join you to go into the Art Institute," right? But I titled it that someday my work will join that Art Institute.
Oh. What a great affirmation, right, Ginger?
Yes, beautiful. I love it. Like you
Someday,
said,
maybe
very
when
romantic.
I'm dead, but someday they might. Yeah.
You know, the snooty ones you never get until you're dead. They never
I don't
appreciate.
even know the process about getting in there, but whatever.
You know, that does raise a question, because a lot of artists, I mean, so I'm a novelist, I'm a writer. I know people who are musicians and people who have all different types of creative outlets and avenues, and everyone is always trying to express a message, to express something that they're trying to say. Do you try to express something different with every painting, or is there a general theme that is Josh Moulton in your artwork?
Mm.
Um, no, so I have a very wide range of subjects, as you know. Like, I'll do rural stuff, I do people, I do portraits, I do abstract. So there are some themes, you know, like people doing their thing on the street every day, and um, but I think people recognize my work maybe by the style,
Yeah.
if not the subject matter.
Yeah.
A lot of people say they love the way I use color, and it's a lot different than most work they see, and light. Um, you know, I don't want to limit myself to a theme or a subject or a style, because
Sure.
maybe I'll see something tomorrow that's totally different and amazing, and I shouldn't not be able to do that because it doesn't fit my
Right.
theme, you know? So
Mhm.
and that's one of the things that kind of turned me off with the gallery scene when I first got started out. They said, well, what is your theme? You know, what do you do? Because their artists only did one type of thing, you know, and that was what they were known for. And I said, well, why should I limit myself to only be able to do one type of subject or theme? I want to do that. I want to do everything, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's why you got into it, right? Because you could,
Right.
you just see the creativity everywhere, like you said earlier.
And why limit yourself?
Mhm.
You know? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Take us away, Ginger.
All right. So we have a question that we ask everybody on the show, and that is, what advice, Josh, would you give to another young painter who wants to do great fine art?
Well, work really, really hard.
Yeah.
Work really, really hard. I work so hard, you know, and because I want to succeed, and I want to do it for a living, and I have been able to do it for a living for 20 something years. And then make sure your work's good enough. And I don't mean to sound, you know, like arrogant, but like, a lot of people don't really understand the level of ability and quality the work needs to be at in order to really, really sell a lot of it, or to get into a gallery. There's standards, you know. Everyone, they might think their work is good, but they really need to make sure. And when they maybe talk to an academic about it, or an art, you know, an art appraiser, or galleries will tell you, they'll be pretty honest about it. And then just make sure you really love it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't love it, there's no point in doing it. And that's
Mhm.
one of the greatest lessons my parents taught me was, you know, we don't care how much money you make, if you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, whatever. They sent me to a really nice school, but they said the most important thing is that you love what you're doing. And that you're doing what you're really good at. You know? And so that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sage advice. I love it.
Mhm.
Are you, I don't know what your setup looks like here with the camera, but are you
Yeah.
able to at least lift it up and just show a little bit of your gallery? Just
Yeah,
so
so
people
since
can.
it's on my phone, I'll show
Yeah.
you. So that's a newer abstract I just finished a couple weeks ago. Some abstracts. This is Bryant Park in New York City.
Oh, yeah. That's
It's
awesome.
it's on watercolor paper. This is a big abstract my dad did in the late 60s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Kind of
that's
got a Pollocky feel to it with the poured paint, you know, and the
definitely.
splatter. That's in Maine. Are you getting a reflection on these, or can you see them?
Nope, can
No,
see them
we're okay.
great.
Just hold it as still as you can.
Okay. Can you see this big guy?
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's
a beach
beautiful.
scene. That's 50 by 50 on canvas.
Wow.
And then these two are new. That's an old flower store in Chicago that's been closed for a few years. And then this is a vineyard scene. It's the Upper West Side of New York City.
Beautiful.
Here's a house portrait I'm working on for someone. So you can see the photo and then the painting.
Where the magic happens, right there.
Huh? Yeah.
That's where the magic happens, right there.
Yeah. It's a big abstract my dad did in the 90s.
Wow.
Am I moving it too fast?
No, you're great.
These are some new ones. That's Early Morning at Belmont Harbor. This is in Maine, Sunset. Carmine's, which is a famous restaurant in Chicago. These are in Vermont.
I love that.
The barn scenes.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah. So yeah, this is it.
Well,
There's a couple more I'll show you up here. That's
go ahead.
That's Nantucket. That's Chicago. And then that is Vermont.
That's fantastic.
And then here's the street.
That's Ginger, that's where it was. That's where Poe and I were walking by, and we're like,
and
"Oh,
you
look."
happened to see the studio. Love it.
And I'll give you this is when you walk in the front door, what you see.
That's right.
Yeah.
Love it.
You see a lot of stuff.
It's fantastic. We're running short on time, but we want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us and to show us some of your work and explain your process. Where can people follow you online and all of that?
Sure. So it's www, three W's, dot Josh Moulton, Moulton, fineart.com. That's the website.
Yep.
And then I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn.
Perfect.
If you just plug in Josh Moulton art, you'll find me there.
He's around.
He is. I found him right before we started the show. I will link all of that stuff in the description below for sure.
I'm even on TikTok, but I'm not really that great. I don't really know how to
You are so hip.
Jesse's not even on TikTok.
I'm not even on TikTok.
My daughters make fun of me because they're like, "Dad, your TikToks suck."
Well, at least they're honest. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I really don't know what I'm doing. So yeah.
Yeah, I get it. But yeah.
Josh, we will link to all of that in the bio and then goodstorylive.com. Again, thank you. And Poe and I can't wait to get down there and see what new stuff you're working on soon.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Enjoy your day.
Bye. Bye. Josh Moulton, ladies and gentlemen, joshmoultonfineart.com. Go check it out.
What an artistic family.
I know, isn't that great? Like his daughter's already showing some early proclivities to it and other creative pursuits. You tend to see that in families that this and then also there's the flip side where there's like people with no creativity whatsoever, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere the genetic wheel lands where it will, and suddenly they have some master artist or some Broadway singer or
I'm still waiting to see with my two, because it's got to be a fine line between like nurturing without and fostering an interest in some sort of creativity or creative area without pushing too forcefully, so that they still maintain that love of it. Do you know what I mean? Like
maybe Grayson or Clara will have their own art gallery there in Atlanta someday.
Maybe.
Who knows? And you'll still feel intimidated to walk in.
I'll go into that one. No, I'm going to start going into more.
Yes, that's right. It'll be baby steps. Baby
steps.
Folks, this has been fun. We're going to wrap up here, but again, go visit Josh's website, or if you're in the greater Chicago area, if you live there, if you're visiting, go check out his fine art gallery.
Absolutely.
And next week, we are going to be discussing the film Pride and Prejudice, 2005, Keira Knightley. I'm going to watch it before then, so I know what I'm talking about. Ginger's already seen it.
Yes.
And,
I should probably watch it again too, though, just for good measure,
refresh yourself. So we will all discuss it together next week. Join us then. Until then, as always, Ginger, this has been a blast.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful week.
You too. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.